Okay, and you're listening to 92.7 WKRA. This is Wisdom's Daughter. I'm here with James Mack, your man on the street, and we have an amazing show for you guys today. James,
Yes,
how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful on this. It's a beautiful day today. Hustle and bustle the day after hump day, and we're just here blending into enjoying life. But it's so much to talk about, and I'm just really waiting to see as we delve into this today. It's really amazing what we're going to find out.
Absolutely. So, as I said, we've got an exciting show for you guys today. We have been talking about Donald Trump all this week, more than I ever thought I would talk about this man. And as I said on yesterday, he can't stay out of the news. Well, I actually stumbled upon an article that was published last week, actually, by an ex producer of the hit show The Apprentice. Now, many of us remember The Apprentice. It was, back in the 2000s, it was a big show, 28 million or 20 million viewers each week, and this was a producer that was from that show, and he actually did an interview with Slate.com, and in this 17-page article he talks about the Donald Trump that he saw and the Donald Trump that he knew on The Apprentice. And what we're going to be talking about is the racial slurs that he endured and encountered while on set. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you see it in the title. Trump used the
it's
N-word on set.
it's
And this
it's
producer is
amazing.
breaking his silence.
It's amazing. It's just amazing. And not just pointing out his wrongdoings or anything, but we want you to get a vivid picture and a dissected picture of what really went on before this guy, just to date, this guy and his arrogance that he had toward the participants of the Apprentice and different medias that he had and how he treated people. I'm really interested to see what's going to come out of this and this
He
conversation.
says just to give you some background. So this ex-producer says that for 20 years I couldn't say what I watched the former president do on the set of the show that changed everything. Now I can. So apparently, this man, in order to be staffed on The Apprentice, had to sign, and all of the cast had to sign a 20-year NDA, meaning that he could
Wow.
not speak on anything that occurred on the set of The Apprentice. And we're going to get into all that this afternoon. But he couldn't talk about what really went on the set of Apprentice for 20 years. So, for those of you who may not remember, The Apprentice debuted in 2004. The show ran from 2004 to 2017. And so the show ran for quite some time. And we're going to get into everything. We're going to get into the cast list, who I was actually surprised. I looked it up to see who was actually on The Apprentice, and the list is going to surprise you. But just to
Wow.
start out, imagine seeing what you saw and not being able to talk about it for 20 years, 2 decades. And the
You
reason,
wanted to keep it quiet. Yeah.
yeah, and the reason is because one of the stipulations of the NDA was a I believe it was a $5 million fine.
Hmm.
We're gonna get into it. Yeah. They had to sign. There were four producers on the show, and four producers who were involved in the first two seasons. And during that time, the producers speaking out had to sign an expansive non-disclosure agreement that promised a fine of $5 million and even jail time if they ever divulged what actually happened. And so that NDA has now expired, and so, yeah, he's breaking his silence. He's speaking out. And the reason why we are talking about this is because as we come upon another election year, we know that Donald Trump has all intentions of not just running for president, but of running for a second term. And
Hmm.
so some of what this producer shares has a really big impact because it gives us another side. It gives us another insight into the man that some of us are potentially going to try to put into office. And I always
Yes.
say that a zebra can't change their stripes. And so
No.
very 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 interesting this particular article and everything that came out, because what this person basically is saying is that the television show that produced The Apprentice put on a ruse, and that
Mm,
everyone was conned. They put on the ruse that Donald Trump was a legitimate, successful businessman. Now we know that
right.
from money. He got, almost $500,000 from his dad, which he
Yes.
squandered, lost, and then he made just as much on The Apprentice. But they created this persona of
Yes.
this legitimate businessman, and I believe that it is that persona that made people feel like Donald Trump would make a successful president because he's been so successful, in business, right? Because a businessman
That's true.
thinks that I can be president, even though we know that Donald Trump doesn't know very much about the Constitution. He's not
Right.
well versed in politics. He doesn't understand federal laws and things like that. But this is who we put into office and who potentially could hold a seat in office yet again. So
And continuing on for that, it gives you the idea of his inner workings and operation on this part of his business. This is his production side. He owned half of the actual show, and he was the star. He made those agreements. One thing I can say, he made an agreement. When he makes contracts and agreements with people, he has a tendency to make sure that he gets a piece of the pie. And I was observing and looking at my notes, and it was really amazing how he made these deals and made that deal with NBC Universal.
absolutely. One of our listeners said it. He can't even make a complete sentence. I mean, and I don't think
True.
that being a good businessman is necessarily the standard that we should put on someone being president. I think understanding the Constitution, I think having studied and gotten a degree maybe in political science and understanding
Hmm.
how our government works. But it's, it's again, it's very interesting because this idea that, and think about it. And I'll finish my sentence. The Apprentice really was a reality show. It not only was it a reality show, it was the reality show that really kind of set the stage for all other reality shows to come. I don't think there's another reality show that I know of, and our listeners can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there's
Hmm.
another show that brought in. You're talking about 28 million viewers who
Yes.
tuned in to watch the first season finale of a show. I think
Yes.
that set the stage for reality shows such as The Bachelor, such as, the Real Housewives wives brand on Bravo, and Project Runway, and some of these other reality TV shows that we like to watch. But understanding that this was a television show, that in some ways it
Yeah.
was scripted, and
It
that they
was.
put, again, he's saying that they kind of put on this persona, and he's not the
Yeah.
man that you think he was. And so what I'm actually going to do is I have an audio clip that we can
Yeah.
actually play, kind of giving us a quick little summary, and then we'll dive deeper into what this producer actually said, what he found, who was the Donald Trump that he saw on The Apprentice, and that's what we're going to be getting into today. And thank you to all of our listeners and those who have joined us on the radio station and also on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up that clip, and
Okay.
let us listen to that in just a moment.
Okay.
And so all right, we've got the clip up. We're good. Let's go.
Emmy
Let's go.
nominated producer Bill Pruitt used to work on The Apprentice with Donald Trump, of course. And now that his 20-year non-disclosure agreement has expired, he's ready to tell all about the former president and what he was like behind the scenes. Now, he wrote about this in a piece over at Slate titled "The Donald Trump I Saw on The Apprentice. For 20 years, I couldn't say what I watched the former president do on the set of the show that changed everything. Now I can." And so he kind of sets up the story by giving the context, and then he talks about very specific examples of Trump being incredibly misogynistic and sexist on set, while also saying deeply racist things. So we'll get to that in a moment. He says, "I was one of 4 producers involved in the first 2 seasons. During that time, I signed an expansive non-disclosure agreement that promised a fine of $5 million and even jail time if I were to ever divulge what actually happened. It expired this year. No one involved in The Apprentice, from the production company or the network to the cast and crew, was involved in a con with malicious intent. It was a TV show, and it was made for entertainment. I still believe that. But we played fast and loose with the facts, particularly regarding Trump. And if you were one of the 28 million who tuned in, chances are you were conned. And so we've heard some of these allegations before that Trump wasn't really like as successful as he claimed to be. But let's get into the details about the sexism and racism after Cenk makes a very concise point.
That's funny. Pausing here.
So we'll get to another clip later, but ultimately, this producer is, again, he's wanting to break his silence and kind of tell us, who Donald Trump really was. One of the things that he talked about was some of the experiences that the cast actually had on the show. For example, Donald Trump cornering a female or not staffer, but a cast member, and asking, if they should fire another cast member. And that person basically coming up with a reason to say, well, they didn't take responsibility. They blamed someone else for their failure. And Donald Trump apparently was not, he didn't film as much as you would have thought he would have filmed. He wasn't always, on set. He wasn't there that often. But when he was there, this is one of the experiences that was brought forward where he didn't know the name of this particular cast member he was referring to. And he touches his chest as if to say, oh, you mean the one with the big chest? And the young lady says yes. And he ultimately fires, this young lady. But that's not even where the controversy comes in. Many of you may remember that Omarosa was on the show. She was very, very big on the show. And so we remember her. Do you remember another cast member by the name of Kwame? He's, African male that was on the show who was quite successful in what he was doing, and quite successful on the show, successful as a leader and all of those things. And apparently there were conversations that were going on about whether or not they should offer him an actual spot on the show, because not on the show, but an actual job, because ultimately that was the purpose of it. The purpose of the show was for the cast or whoever was the winner of Apprentice to either come away with some monies to start a business, to basically to be able to come away, with something. Right.
Which was their prize. Their prize was, if you can get through a session, week, or whatever, or get through these tasks, you will be rewarded. Did you also understand that the winners and the losers, say for instance, you have a task on that show and the losing team has to go back to this makeshift loft, and the other contestants get an opportunity to go to the penthouse and go and see all the gold furniture and the gold toilets and all these things. And he's like a confidence flim flam guy. I'm going to make you think or give you the illusion that you're winning something, but actually I'm getting everything. What you see behind you is just on television, it's just smoke and mirrors. And it's just amazing how this producer, after all this time, came out to speak out. And even now that the 20-year span is over now, and he's coming out with all this information, it's amazing.
I think where some of the challenge came in also is that the viewers were made to believe that whatever Trump touched turned to gold. Okay, he basically had that golden finger, and I think that was where, again, some of this kind of ties into, well, he'd make an excellent president because he's such a great businessman, but that may not necessarily have been the case. So one of the finalists was Kwame Jackson. Okay, many of you may remember Kwame Jackson. He was a Black broker from Goldman Sachs. Worked for a very reputable company and so forth. And so there were conversations that were taking place about Kwame as to determine if he should in fact be the winner of this particular show. And it is I'm gonna try to say this as politely as I can, because it was,
please. Okay.
It
polite, but you are polite. You're very polite.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to say it as politely as I can. But ultimately what was said by Trump was that when they talked about whether or not they should offer him the position or for him to be the winner, His
Right.
response was, but I mean, would America buy a N word winning?
Yes.
Okay, that was what he
I got a
said.
problem with that. Yeah, I
Would
got a problem
would
with that.
America buy into a N word winning? And just the fact that he said, I mean, and many of you are probably not going to be surprised that Donald Trump would use that kind of language. But once again, this now, he wasn't president back then, he's president today, but this is a former president, the same former president who has said, let's make America great again, let's go back to basically, let's go back to
Right.
the way that things were,
Yeah.
and so
That
forth.
if
So
anything, you won't get paid. You'll be my servants or something.
So the article goes on to say, as a producer working in unscripted or reality television, very much like the Apollo, you want to entertain, you want to make people joyful, you want to kind of challenge their ways of thinking. And the presumption is that reality TV is scripted. And the truth of the matter is, we know to some degree it is kind of scripted. He says what actually happens is the illusion of reality by staging situations against an authentic backdrop. The more
Hmm.
authentic it is to say, he says, for example, those of you who've ever watched a show called Deadly Catch, you may remember seeing like the 40-foot wave bearing down on the crab boat in the Bering Sea, just at that very moment that the videographer, the cameraman is able to catch it. These things are literally staged. And that's ultimately what he's saying about The Apprentice, that The Apprentice itself was also kind of staged. I mean, I think we
It was. It was.
very much. I think we kind of remember the famous word "you're fired," right?
Yes.
That was Trump's favorite thing to say, right? You're fired.
Yeah.
And so, if you think about it, why would we want to put someone in office who would use a word like that? And just to put it into perspective, if you remember, there was a cooking show, and I believe the name is Paula. What was Paula's last name? Do you remember?
Paula Dean.
Paula Dean. So Paula Dean had her own show. She had a cooking show, but
Hmm.
apparently 10 or 20 years ago, she had used the N-word. It got out, and they actually took her show
They
from
did.
her for
Really.
using the N-word. So if we would take the show away from, I mean, granted, she's on the show, and the funny thing is, you're gonna laugh, James. You're gonna laugh at this,
I,
and
I'm waiting for
and
it.
you're gonna have a great laugh. So I was listening to one of Dave Chappelle's comedy shows on Netflix, and he actually talks about this situation, and he says, "No, I wasn't offended. Paula Dean actually taught me how to cook fried chicken." Okay.
Yes, but I mean, when you look at a context like that, and you put Mr. Trump up against other celebrities, and you made reference to this. This guy had almost half, and in media, we deal with ratings, we deal with numbers, who's watching, so forth and so on. This man had 28 million people. That's maybe half of what people watch on the Super Bowl, probably. Before his reality show, he had set the bar for all reality shows. He did it in such a way that he was so he wasn't even qualified to be on television. He couldn't read a prompter. They had to feed him lines. There's even a text of someone saying that in order for Donald Trump to know all of the contestants, you think that he would know them, and he's looking in the camera calling Omarosa and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He did not know the names of the contestants that were on his show. They had to feed it through. There was a
No, he didn't.
producer. There was a producer
Mhm.
that had to feed through the information to him. That's Omarosa. Turn to the left. This and that and the other. Now we take directions in media, yeah, but then for a show that perceived this man being a mega businessman, he's really, in a sense, inept to do some things,
Absolutely. So
basic
I'm
things.
I'm looking at this article again. We'll definitely make sure that we provide you with the link to the article if you want to read it. But the article was written by Bill Pruitt, and so Bill Pruitt sits down with the one of the persons that got the last producer position, Jay. Beanstalk, if I'm saying that right, Jay
Right.
Beanstalk. And so he talks to him and he says, why Trump?
J Bean, J Beanstalk.
I think it's
Yeah.
pronounced
Okay.
Beanstalk or Beans,
Okay.
yeah, Beanstalk. And so he says that, he learns that they both lived in New York for a time. And he says, knowing what we know about Trump, selling the idea that intelligent people would compete to land a job working for him would be a challenge. He says the idea
Right.
is to have a new and different billionaire every season, just like there's
Wow.
a new and different island on Survivor. So they reached out to
Yeah.
Spielberg, they reached out to Katzenberg, Geffen, and among others. And he says Trump is the only one who agreed to sign on. And they
Right.
say, we'll make it work. And that is ultimately
And
how
he
they
made a
settled on
lot of
Trump.
money. And he made a lot of money. People don't know this man was broke at meaning on paper. He was in bankruptcy in Atlantic City. All of his casinos were failing. The buildings that he was had his name on and per se said like Trump Tower in Chicago or Trump Tower period or the Trump building or these buildings leased his name. Most of them were owned by other entities and everything, but they use his name for licensing purposes. And people are thinking that he owns all of this stuff, but yet
Mhm.
and still in all, he just marketed his name. I can't knock the man. He's one of the best marketers. He may be lying and saying different things, but he's one of the best marketers that I know.
Listen,
I mean,
some of those buildings were built by people that Trump never paid.
that's
let's
true.
be
Well, that's
let's be
true
clear.
too.
Let's be clear. Some of those buildings were built by people who unfortunately
Yeah.
just never got
And
paid.
some of them aren't safe either. He used cheap material. He got together with underground bosses, under those they say alleged mafia influencers in the construction business and in the unions that they shortchanged the designs just to save money. So he's a miser one, and he sounds like Scrooge McDuck sometimes. You know how Scrooge McDuck, he wanted the last quarter that he had when he was a kid or something. And this man really was a terrible businessman, but a great marketer. Have you ever had any Trump vodka?
No, I can't, James. I can't say that I have.
Have you ever
And
bought a Trump tie,
no, I
or
have not.
somebody that you like?
I
Here,
don't
honey,
wear.
put this tie on,
I don't wear
or
ties, James.
as a gift. No, I know, but as a gift, you could have gave it to your boss or the boss you didn't care for, or you gave. Have you ever had Trump steak before?
No, I can't say that I have.
Check out.
I don't even think I've walked ever in front of the Trump building. I probably crossed over to the other side when I was in New York.
And I'm saying that to say the man knew how to mark. He could lie with a straight face, sure enough, and make you and convince you to buy whatever he was selling. I have the great University of Trump. The Trump name and his glitz and glamour, I think, is what caught most of those contestants by thinking that, hey, this man, the personification of a successful billionaire. And he's riding around in limousines. He got golf courses. He's got this. He's got that. It's just like at prom time. You clean as the board of health, but you got to return that tuxedo before Monday at 12 o'clock, or they're going to add another $50 to it. And so he was leasing his fame and his fortune. He did it, and I got to give it to the guy. The guy was one of the best in the business.
I found something else in this particular article because, again, this guy just wants to highlight and really share what really went on the show. So many of you, again, remember his famous trademark, the "you're fired," right? Trump actually did not come up with that. It was kind of one of the producers. One of the producers kind of said, they were having a conversation. So they're in the control room. They're watching as the three men that Donald Trump just called back into the control room to kind of, have a conversation. They have a quick huddle, and then they kind of leave the control room. And, they're like, well, we'll just confer with Trump. And he's like, they're telling him, you need to say something more direct to kind of like conclude the moment. They're trying to kind of direct Trump to make for a good show. And he says, well, if this was the real thing, I'd probably just fire him. So the producer says, Beanstalk, he says, well, why not just say that? So Trump says, fine. So then he says the line insertion happened in a perilously scripted way. but it is deemed satisfactory. You're fired becomes the expression we'll stick with. It works. Trump comes off as decisive to the point. They wanted to make him look like a real businessman. And so they said later Trump will try to trademark "you're fired," but he was unsuccessful. He actually tried to trademark the "I'm fired." So they say that Trump's appearances on The Apprentice made up so little of their shooting schedule that whenever he showed up to film, they said it isn't just the wild card on camera moments we both hope for and are
Right.
terrified of that put everyone on edge. They said it was the way that he was, the
Right.
star, half owner of the show. He
Right.
targets people on the crew. So
Yeah.
the same way that this persona of intimidating the cast, that he also treated the crew that way. So,
Yeah.
and I'm reading from the article, while leering at a female camera assistant or assessing the physical attributes of a female contestant for whoever
Mhm.
is listening, he orders a female camera operator off an elevator on which she's about to film him, saying she's too heavy.
Wow.
Another female
Oh, he
camera,
did. Oh, he made a comparison, like you're,
he was
like
body
he did
shaming
with.
her. He was body
Oh my.
shaming her. He's
Isn't
saying
that
that
something?
she's too heavy, like she's too fat. There's another
Wow.
female camera operator. Now she's got blonde hair, blue eyes. He's kind of comparing her to his wife, Ivanka Trump. He says, now there's a beautiful woman behind that camera. He
Hmm.
says towards the other 10 operators that are there. He says, that's all I want to look at. This man is
Wow.
married, but he's saying
Yeah.
to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, beautiful camera
That's
operator, you
that's
know,
his type. That's his type.
that's what he wants to look at. Remind you, this is the same man who was caught on Hollywood Access, that video where he
Yeah.
brags about grabbing a woman,
See,
on her
you
woman's
you
part.
you're not going to let him forget that though.
Nope,
But
I'm
I'm
not.
going to say this
Never.
as we go along. You're listening to WKRA 92.7 FM on your dial. You're with Wisdom's daughter, our wonderful, 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 wonderful information and inspirational co host. And I'm James Mack, your man on the street. And we are just delving into the ins and the outs of this person that who made TV history and media history by having one of the most successful reality shows in the history of television. And as we're delving into the fact of this person, we're trying to give you an image of what you're going to be dealing with in the future with a future possibility that Mr. Trump might get back into office. Maybe we need to, as I say, give you a refresher that uh, being in that office and having the persona of a superstar or a super celebrity, his mind is on one thing, that's him. His bottom line is he wants to get as much money as he wants to. And this is not uh, a criticism or a letdown of anybody in any political party. He just so happens to be one of the most interesting office holders that I've ever seen. And the attitude that he has towards people, and this producer, as we get more into it, and I'm pretty sure that uh Wisdom is going to make sure that I know, and she's going to keep the fuel to the fire because this information is so important. The use of the N word, and he has been at many times allegedly used this term loosely. And I think that any derogatory or any type of ethnic slang should not be used towards anybody. We're all Americans. Maybe we come from different parts of the world, but we're here and we're all Americans, and others are trying to reach that point because they want to have the American dream. And Mr. Trump, he projected that American dream at the demise of dehumanizing other people. And Wisdom, as I'm listening to you, and you make a very good point. He said a lot of stuff, and when I heard it, I was shocked that the Access a Hollywood video and the way that he went to the certain staff members and certain participants.
Listen, we're not making this up. This is not about a
No.
matter of personal opinion. I mean, no one is all bad, right? I can tell you some positive attributes, but what I'm highlighting is what he's been showing showing us, the things that he said, right? So it's not about a matter of opinion. It's about a matter of fact. These things are documented, and here we have a witness. So you mentioned about the
Yeah.
N-word. So I'm going to share with
Yeah.
you what exactly happened with Kwame Jackson, this black broker from Goldman Sachs. And so ultimately they, again, there's a conversation that's having. And so I'll just read it. They said, I think Kwame would make a great addition to the organization. This is Kepcher, okay, says to Trump,
Yes.
another producer, who winces while his head bobs around in reaction to what he's hearing. And his body language is showing that he's resisting that statement that Kwame, this black man from Goldman Sachs, would make a great
Yes.
addition to the organization. And then Trump asked, referring to Omarosa, why didn't he just fire her? It's a reasonable
Yes.
question, given that this is
Yeah.
the first time we've been in this situation. None of this is something that we expected. And Beanstalk, another producer, says, well, that's not his job. That's yours. And Trump's head
Wow.
continues to bob. You ever had one of those little bobbleheads on your car that just bobbles?
I have, I have,
So
and I can imagine him doing that.
imagine Trump's little head bobbing. He says, well, I don't. So Kepcher says, I don't think he knew he had the ability to do that, meaning Kwame. Kwame may not have known that he had the power to actually fire her on the show. And so here comes Donald Trump. Yeah, he says to no one in particular, but I mean, would America buy a N winning? This is what he said, as if to say that America would have a problem. Little did he know, and I believe this occurred in either the first or the second season, but little did he know that come 2008 that we would actually have a
Right.
we would actually have a black president, not just talking about someone
Wow.
winning a reality TV show. So I want to talk
Yes.
real quickly. I've got the cast list up. I want to talk about who actually appeared on The Apprentice, and I'm not talking about a guest appearance. I'm talking about who the actual cast members were, who competed. So Arnold Schwarzenegger did 9 episodes of The Apprentice. We've got Donald Trump's own son, Eric Trump, did 21 episodes in 2015. Ivanka Trump, his daughter, okay, 82 episodes. 82 episodes he did. Some other names that may surprise you. Tyra Banks did 4 episodes.
Wow.
Tyra Banks, Layla
Okay.
Ali. We all know about the
Oh
famous
my.
Omarosa. Victoria
Yes.
Gotti, Vivica A. Fox did 9 episodes. LaToya Jackson, Janet Jackson's sister, did 23
Sure did. She
episodes.
sure was on
She
there.
was
She
there.
was on there.
Star Jones did 14 episodes. Let's keep moving on. Do you guys
Yes.
remember Clay Aiken from American Idol? So Clay Aiken did
Sure
14
did.
episodes. I mean, the names is
Wow.
mind-boggling. We've got half the cast from Real Housewives of Atlanta. We've got Nene Leakes. We've got
Yeah.
who else do we have? We have Kenya Moore from the Real Housewives
Right.
of Atlanta. We've got Portia Williams. Portia Williams would not be excluded because if Kenya Moore and Nene were doing it, she also likely would be doing it, right? We've
Yes.
got other
Very
names
much so.
that Sharon Osbourne. Do you remember Sharon Osbourne?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Ozzy's daughter. Ozzy
Yes.
Osbourne's daughter.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
keep going really quickly. You've got Boy George, okay, Lisa
Boy,
Rinna,
sure did. Mm-hmm.
and these people are on quite a few episodes. Claudia Jordan, 21 episodes. And
Wow.
one of our listeners mentioned it, but Diana Mendoza, who was Miss Universe, I believe, I'm not sure which
Yes.
year she won, but she did 14 episodes. And I believe that was after. But yeah, so we've got Miss Universe doing 14 episodes. Keisha Knight Pulliam, from, of course, The Cosby Show, Dennis Rodman. I mean, the list goes. Geraldo.
Yeah, he sure had him on there. And Geraldo went on to continue. You know, he was real. His popularity was Geraldo Rivera he went to Chicago and he went to a particular building that Al Capone used to occupy, and they blew up this safe that was down there, and they thinking that they were going to find some bodies or some guns or some old money or some hideout or something like that. And there was nothing in the safe. I mean, it was live TV, real big audience and everything. They blew it up and it was nothing in there. But when you go down the list of people and the list of some A-list celebrities and some some maybe not. These were people that probably, you think about it, most of the actors and actresses that have hit shows, um, particularly ones that I'm familiar with, these people do not get residuals, or they didn't get some kind of compensation for the reruns, and or didn't know the business. So, and they've been out of the spotlight and trying to get back into the spotlight, or trying to get their careers jumped off, took a chance knowing, I believe some of them knew. Tyra Banks, New York City Fashion Week and fashion model. Omarosa, she knew some things. I think she was popular because she was connected to or engaged to the gentleman that played in the Green Mile, and
Right.
he passed away. He used to be, shout out to him, he was a Chicago brother. He used to be a gas man, used to
Shout
work
out
on the
to Shred
pipes.
Town. But
Yes.
what about
Okay.
people
Yes.
like Arsenio Hall? Arsenio Hall was on the show.
Yes.
Snooki was
Yes.
was was on the show. I mean, you've got such a broad range. Khloe Kardashian, Cyndi Lauper.
Yes.
I'm looking
Yes.
at these names and I'm like, so even Sinbad. Did you know the Sinbad? I
Yeah.
forgot the Sinbad.
Yes, and shout
What?
out to Sinbad. He's recovering from a stroke of some
Yes,
kind,
yes.
and we want to shout out to our brother Sinbad. Funny guy, and he's a wonderful person. And you also said, and I wanted to emphasize that these were people. Donald Trump was, before The Apprentice, was looked at for his boxing affiliations and his casinos. He dealt with Don King and all these things. So he was kind of with Taj Mahal and all these things. But when the bankruptcies and all of the financial troubles started happening, Donald Trump's lifeline was NBC Universal and The Apprentice. And when you look at it, he took those people that weren't, quote unquote, they were hungry enough to appear, and they knew that they were going to get paid for every episode. But like I said, they were trying to jumpstart their careers. And Donald Trump, seeing, it's like a bird that's in trouble and his wing is flapping, and you got the cat just sitting there saying, okay, I got dinner. He saw an opportunity to expose and to use these people for his advantage, to get the means necessary. He knew that certain people would not watch if you didn't see certain people on that show. And then, just like Miss Universe, you knew he was part of, I think he was part owner or something of Miss Universe pageant.
Of course it
And
was, because it
how,
was ladies in
wow,
little skimpy bathing suits. So of course you'd be involved in
you're
that.
gonna you're gonna let that man know that, hey, you be looking at women and saying all things like that. I like that in you. Power to this, to women of all, and those that make great accomplishments, and
He is
those
not
that do.
well, let me ask you a question.
Ask.
Do you have a daughter or a sister or a niece?
I do.
Would
I
you
have a
leave them
daughter, my sister.
would you leave them alone in a room with Donald Trump?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I,
I wouldn't
I
leave
didn't
her
think
with
so.
P. Diddy or any other celebrities to get involved
So
in any of the. I wouldn't if I could help it, because I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of flim flam going on, and it just surprises me how successful this show was. And we're not just talking about his politics. This is his business work. This
it
is how
is.
this man dealt with people and and business. And he made a ton of money as
But
the
remember, he
co-owner. Yeah.
he was not their first choice. They did not
No.
run to Donald Trump and say, "We want you to do The Apprentice." He's the only
No.
one who said yes. What I'm going to do is
Yeah. It's
I'm gonna jump back into that sound clip that we were listening to a little bit earlier,
okay.
and let's hear just a little bit more of that while we've got time.
On that worked at The Apprentice, and I want to get into not just the racist stuff, but how they built up this con together. NBC and Trump together decided to con the American people into believing he was a successful businessman. I think that tells you more about the media than it does about Donald Trump. And I don't want you to miss that part of the story. So we'll get to it in a second.
Definitely. So let's start with the alleged sexism on set. Bill Pruitt writes, while leering at a female camera assistant or assessing the physical attributes of a female contestant for whoever is listening, he orders a female camera operator off an elevator on which she is about to film him. She's too heavy, I hear him say. So this is very similar to what he would say about Miss America contestants if he believed that they were overweight. And then after he was accused of that, he would double down on it kind of shamelessly. So that's part of the reason why I don't think that these allegations are really gonna make a difference at all. Certainly not with the voters and who they're currently supporting in this election. It's because a lot of this stuff is stuff that we already knew about Trump. But let me give you more. Another female camera operator, writes Pruitt, who happens to have blonde hair and blue eyes, draws from Trump comparisons to his own Ivanka Trump. There's a beautiful woman behind that camera, he says, toward a line of 10 different operators set up in the foyer of Trump Tower one day. That's all I want to look at. And then finally, this part stood out to me the most. Trump corners a female producer and asks her whom he should fire. She demurs, saying something about how one of the contestants blamed another for their team losing. Trump then raises his hand, cupping them, or his hands, cupping them to his chest. You mean the one with the, basically talking about her breasts.
Yep.
He doesn't know the contestant's name. Trump eventually fires her. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not surprised by any of this. Trump is openly misogynistic. It's just who he is.
He's openly misogynistic. He's very sexist, and again, we what we're talking about is the fact that we have to consider who we're going to put into office, right? Who are we going to put into office for 2024? We talked about it yesterday, the fact that there's nothing in the Constitution that will prevent Donald Trump necessarily from being able to run. And so, unless that's a part of his stipulation, with his with the arraignment that's his sentencing, that's going to be coming up July 11th. We don't know, and he's stalling for time, and I wholeheartedly believe that he's going to do whatever he can within his power to try to stall that process, whether it be through the appeal process or however it may be, to prevent being sentenced, because he could potentially get some jail time, which could knock him out of this election. Donald Trump has, for all intents and purposes, is determined to serve a second term. And we have to remind ourselves, as we heard in the sound clip, we've heard all these things before, but we've got to put it into perspective. And on tomorrow's show, we're going to be really doing a deep dive into what a second term would look like if Donald Trump was to take the presidency once again.
And also to give a comparison of the other candidate that is in the race also. And like I was trying to explain, someone just said something to me, and I told them, I said, it's not per se, nobody's beating up on anybody. We want you to have an informed choice, and you have a right to, everyone has a right to their opinions, and we live in, thank God, so far we still have freedom of speech, but no one's going to be insulted or anything like that. And for those of you that have been looking and was concerned, you have a right to choose whom you would like to. We just like to bring a little information and let you know how things would look in our country with the great possibility of knowing what we know now. Will we as a country make a informed choice? Nobody's perfect, nobody's great or anything like that, but we see some attributes of people that really is disturbing. The N-word, the personality that a person has when that person is in the highest office in the land and supposed to represent everyone non-biasly. But it's okay. You have to delve into and look at the choices that you have. And we're going to continue to bring that out. I just wanted to say that to one of my dear friends that didn't want to be identified. I understand. And we are fair. We are impartial. This is a fair and impartial show. And we're going to give all sides of all things. So hang on for the ride. But again, Wisdom, I wanted to iterate and ask you, what impact do you really think that people will have, that the impact on this information would have on on the potential voters? Do you think people are really, really concerned about the person that they might return back to the highest office in the land?
I'm a little bit on the fence, but I want to lean toward yes, because I don't know if it's challenging because you have these candidates that seem to promise the world, and then I think voters have unrealistic expectations as to how quickly they're going to be able to execute some of the things in their plan. But I think just like how you interview someone for a job, just like how you think about who you want as a spouse, just like how
Right.
you go to different schools and check them out to make sure your child is going to be in a safe environment. I think that's the stance that we have to take. The
Right.
last thing, one of the things that I did find out is that Donald Trump did try to he did try to somewhat deny a little bit him saying the fact that
Hmm.
he used this racial slur. And what he did was he sent out a tweet basically saying, "Oh, so there's no tape," right? Basically saying, "So you not saying that he didn't." He kind of low key told on himself, as if to say, like, "Well, I'm not saying I didn't say it. I just want to make sure that you guys don't have the tape of it." And there is a tape
Hmm.
of him actually saying it. It hasn't come out
Yeah.
yet. Maybe in light of this article, they may actually release the audio
Right.
about it. But the truth of the matter is everybody has to make their own decisions. There are some people who look at Donald Trump and they feel like what Donald Trump did during his presidency, they felt like made enough waves, for them. My
Right.
challenge is that, I think Trump took a lot of credit for things that people may not have realized was actually initiated and started by the Obama and Biden administration. My
Right.
my own testimony is that I had $170,000 worth of student debt completely wiped out,
Hmm.
and I know for a fact that the Republican Party is trying to do away with that program because it,
Right.
it benefits the less fortunate. And see, rich people stay rich by keeping people poor. Let's just be clear here.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so
Good point.
there is never going to be a perfect president, but when you think about the person that you want to put in office, you want to know as much about that person and their character, because I think the
Right.
character of a man is important. And I think these conversations are important for us to have to give people an
Yes.
opportunity to just think it through and to understand that whoever we put in that office really does have the ability to turn this country, on its head or to uplift it and take it to the next level. Yesterday we
Right.
listened to a clip of Donald Trump himself saying, now he was referring to Hillary Clinton with this email situation, the possibility that she might have gotten convicted for using her personal email, for work related stuff and all the things that she said. But anyway, but he basically was saying that convicted felon should not run for president, and
Right.
he was saying that it would
And
turn
he's
government on its head.
and
And
he
so
actually said that. He actually said that. Yeah.
he said it. There's no denying it. It's on TikTok. You can look it up. Donald Trump says convicted felons should not. Just look up. TikTok Donald Trump election 2016. He was referring
Hmm.
to Hillary Clinton, saying that we could potentially have a sitting president who's a convicted felon, or who's been convicted of a felony, or who is facing a criminal case. Well, we
Right.
have someone who's a former president who was facing a criminal case, who was found guilty of 34 felony charges, and who's now facing additional criminal cases, who still, according to the lack of wording in our constitution, has the ability to run for office. And we just need to be really, really careful. And after we do our show tomorrow, where we kind of
Right.
highlight what his plan and his agenda is, because as a voter,
Yes.
that's what I'm interested in. What is it that you are wanting to do for the people? Right, because
Exactly.
in my opinion, I think Donald Trump works for himself. He serves himself. He serves the community that he thinks is the superior race.
Yeah.
But what is it that you are looking to do for the people? And that's what I'm looking at when I look for in a candidate. I don't care if they're Democrat or if they're Republican. What is it that you're looking to do for the people that you
Exactly.
serve? And I think we need to have that discussion tomorrow so that people
Yes.
can make an informed decision about who they're going to put in office. So what I
And I
want
like to also iterate also, not just that. Wisdom, it is very important. And I can't stress this enough, and I think that the sentiments are going to be the same. That people register to vote. Not just register, but get off of whatever you're sitting on and vote, whether it's your local elections. There's some congressional races that are coming up in the base state of Mississippi, where our station is based. It is very important. Not I'm not for or against anybody. All I'm saying is make an informed choice, register and vote. Young people. And what I mean by young people, you know exactly who I am and who I'm saying this to. When you get a diploma, you should have a voter registration card in your hand. There are efforts of people that are trying to take away those very rights that everyday American citizens have. You got to register to vote. You got to, I don't care who you vote for. I have a preference of my own, but my preference means nothing when it comes down to the ballot box. I trust the electoral system. There are no tricks or anything that's going to hinder you from going. The only thing that's going to hinder you from going to the ballot box, and we're going to be emphasizing this in the months to come, is that you participate in the process. You got to. And if you don't participate in the process, you have no voice, you have no say. So we can sit back on the sidelines and, of course, piggyback and even discuss some things. But if you don't put it to action, you will get what you reserve. If you do not vote, your candidate or your person that you feel that can carry out the agenda to help people or and help the country and make it continue to make it better. America's
It's
already great.
it's our constitutional right to vote, and
Exactly.
everyone
Exactly.
should exercise that power. Well, we've got about
Exactly.
9 more minutes until the end of
Yeah.
our show. You're listening to 92.7 WKRA. Again, we want to thank all of you for tuning in. We have dropped the call-in link, so if you do want to call in, give us your opinion. Tell us what you think. Maybe you have a different opinion from what you've heard. Maybe you have some information that's different from what we've heard, but ultimately, we're talking about preparing for our political future, for the future of this country, and making sure that we understand who it is that may be entering into the presidential seat. We don't know. We don't know what the plan is going to be. But as we've said, it's been
Exactly.
controversial. Donald Trump has not been showing himself to be in the best light as of late. It seems like the man is
Very
is, is
true.
constantly in trouble. And interestingly enough, I think if it was a Biden, if it was a Hillary Clinton, if it was an Obama, I don't think any other person would be able to get away with what we have allowed Donald Trump to do. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why have we been so lenient with allowing Donald Trump to do things that we know we probably wouldn't allow any other presidential candidate to do. I mean, I honestly believe that if Barack Obama, was accused of the things that Donald Trump was accused, he would not have made it into office. A caller said
Right.
Biden was against busing school integration and claimed that members of the KKK as best friends while in the Senate. And you know what?
Yeah.
That may be true, but what if you look at what has he done while he's been in that presidential seat? He
And what we got to
continued.
realize too, also in that, his colleagues. Have you heard of the term wisdom, Dixiecrats?
No, I haven't.
The Dixiecrats were Southern Democrats that were fiercely against the Civil Rights Bill back in the 60s. When Lyndon Johnson, our President Lyndon Johnson, put forth the Civil Rights Bill, there were Democrats. Now let's talk about Democrats and Republicans a little bit. The Democrats were against the civil rights bill that gives us the freedoms and gives us full access to being U.S. citizens, and we have the rights and the privileges that we have. We had them, but there was so much Jim Crow discrimination going on that this bill had to become law. And Joe Biden, who was a young senator coming up, had to deal with the likes of a Senator Storm Thurmond of South Carolina, who was the oldest person, I think, that survived being a senator. That's the only thing I can remember him of. And also, he had a daughter by a African American person. and it
as
was
as
hidden for so
as
long.
as many did. And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm
But
not saying that this caller is wrong, but look at
right,
look at what Biden did while he was in office and how
exactly,
he has supported the
exactly.
black community. I mean, there are so many people that have benefited, so many people, black and brown people, who have benefited from the
Yes,
student loan debt relief program that he put into place. You're
the
talking about
the
you're
infrastructure plan
you
too.
know,
Yeah,
you're talking about people whose credit have increased, people whose debt to income ratio has decreased so that they can get loans for homes and things like that. I mean, he's done a lot more than that, but that will probably be the biggest thing. And we know that Donald Trump's plan was to undo anything that even said
yes,
Obama, to undo Obamacare, claiming that it was too expensive, to
yes,
undo all of those things. So as I said, you're never going to find a perfect president, but you have to ask yourself, what is this, how is this president going to serve me, regardless
yeah,
of what his past is. Even with Donald Trump, if Donald Trump was really truly committed to helping this community, helping the less fortunate, helping to even the playing field. There's a video on TikTok that went viral, some time ago, of a woman explaining the game of Monopoly. We all know the game of Monopoly, right? We know it because we know the rules. But
right,
imagine coming into a game of Monopoly and not knowing that you're supposed to get a certain amount of money to start off the game. And not only do you not get that money, but you also don't get the money you're supposed to get, or the same amount of money every time you pass go, right? Imagine if you didn't understand the rules to Monopoly. How can you win a game if you don't understand the rules, right? And
that's true.
so, and when you look at the black community, we were kind of thrust into this world where we were not starting on the same playing field. We were running a race
Right,
where we were starting the race already way behind, and then we weren't
right,
given adequate training, adequate education, adequate resources, and told, go do what everybody else can do, even though I
right.
haven't given you the tools necessarily, to do so. When we
And
send people
and
to
then
war, we
and then
train
you
them,
run,
right? We
and then
train them.
we do we and then we run up on the fact that you have to be above excellent or above superior to even compete in the marketplace, whatever the field is. It seemed like people that African Americans have always had to play catch up. We had to
Absolutely.
be better. We had to we're never been exclusively put together in this context as being an equal citizen. That's the problem that
That
we
is the
have.
absolute problem. Think about it.
We're not equals.
How do you expect someone to be successful winning a war or even fighting in a war when we haven't given them a helmet? We didn't give them a
Yeah,
rifle. Maybe we gave them a
sure
stick.
did.
We didn't give them the appropriate uniform, right? We didn't
No,
give them the appropriate shoes. We're not giving them adequate food and water, but we're saying, now go fight in this war and make it back home. And so, it's like, well, you're in this war just like all of us are. You should be able to do A, B, C, and D, but that's just not necessarily the case. And it's
that's
hard
true.
when you are constantly being put in positions where we have to work twice as hard as everyone else. We don't get the same pay as everyone else. We're not necessarily, I don't know if you are aware, but I learned that there's an HBCU now where the student body is like 99 point something percent Caucasian.
Yeah.
How do you have a
Oh,
historically black college that has no black students? So I'm just giving you some examples, and I know we're running out of
yeah.
time. We're having a really, really
Yeah.
great conversation, and
Yes.
we're kind of coming down to the wire. So we want you to join us. We are here live Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be talking about tomorrow, what would a second term look like with Donald Trump. And this is going to be based on his 2025 project plan. It's not going to be based on our personal opinion. It's going to be a fair conversation, but we want you to join the discussion. Call in, talk to us in the chat. Let us know. You can listen to us on 92.7 WKRA FM radio. You can also find James Mack on his YouTube channel, James MC, Your Man on the Street. You can also tune in on my YouTube channel, Wisdom's Daughter, and we are hoping that you will join us not just tomorrow, but that you'll join us Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because it's Your Man on the Street, and we've got to talk about some things. There's so many
We
things
got
going
to.
on.
We got to. Be
Absolutely.
blessed.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you on the next show.